Bonjour et bienvenue dans cette nouvelle leçon de français au niveau B2 sur les temps du passé. Hello and welcome to this French lesson at the level B2 about French past tenses. Okay, so in this lesson we're going to revise the 4 tenses of the past in French. So, le passé composé, the perfect tense, l'imparfait, the imperfect tense, le plus que parfait, the plus-perfect tense, and the simple past, le passé simple en français. On y va. So, first of all, we're going to revise the passé composé, okay? So, to define how we're going to use it in French, so remember that the passé composé is widely used in oral French, in spoken French, and in everyday writing, okay? So, it expresses a completed action in French, right? So, as an example, I can quote Hier, j'ai vu un film, elle est partie à 18h, ou alors ils ont gagné le match. So, it's the tense that moves the story forward, okay? Then I'm going to have the imperfect, okay? So, the imperfect is most likely responding to the question, what was happening or what was it like? So the imperfect is used to describe background information, habitual or repeated actions, or ongoing situation in the past, or most likely something you were used to. Because in French, we cannot say I was used to. You're going to use the imperfect, okay? So for example, il faisait beau et les oiseaux chantaient. Quand j'étais enfant, je lisais beaucoup. Elle portait une robe rouge. And here in the English translation, we're going to have when I was a child, I used to read a lot. And as in French, you cannot translate literally I was used to. So here you're going to use the imperfect. So I used to read a lot. We're going to use the imperfect for the verb to read in French. And then we have the pluperfect responding to the question, what had happened before? Okay, so the pluperfect talks about an action that's happened before another action in the past. Okay, so it's most likely presented in French books as the past of the past. Okay, so the structure, remember, is the imperfect of the verb avoir or être plus the past participle. Okay, so j'avais oublié mes clés, I have forgotten my keys. Elle était partie quand je suis arrivé. Ou alors, nous avions vu ce film, donc nous avons choisi un autre. And then we're going to talk about le passé simple. So, the simple past is the formal version of the passé composé. Okay? So, the passé simple is used almost exclusively in written French, in literature, historical text, and often fairy tales. It replaces the passé composé in those contexts, but it is not used in the conversation. But you need to know the stance for the B2 level, as sometimes you will meet those texts or you will read some literature French, okay? So it has the same function as the passé composé, okay? So when the action is completed, or punctual, okay? But the form is different because you have a lot of exceptions, and for example, the verb to be is je fus, tu fus, il fut, nous fûmes, vous fûtes, ils furent, okay? So its conjugation is a bit different as the imperfect or the passé composé, okay? So, for example, I'm going to quote this example. Il entra dans la pièce et s'assit, okay? Elle vit un homme étrange au coin de la rue. So here that's typical literature French. Okay. Le roi mourut sans héritier. So these verbs will be entra. Entra. So entra is the passé simple of the verb entrer. S'assit. So we have the reflexive verb s'asseoir. It means to sit. So that's the passé simple of the verb s'asseoir. Remember S apostrophe indicates that this is a reflexive verb. Vie is the passé simple of voir, and mourut is the simple past, passé simple of mourir. So let's test if you understood it. How would you translate all those phrases? So first phrase, he was sleeping when the phone rang. So here I'm going to translate this phrase as il dormait quand le téléphone a sonné. ok, imparfait plus passé composé. Il dormait, so that's an action in the past, quand soudain, j'aurais pu ajouter soudain, le téléphone a sonné, completed action, ok? How I'm going to translate, they had already left when I arrived. So I'm going to give you a few seconds. Ils étaient déjà partis quand je suis arrivé. So here, perfect plus passé composé. Okay. Then, the princess opened the window and looked at the sky. So here, most likely, it's in a novel, okay, or in literature. La princesse ouvrit la fenêtre et regarda le ciel. So here I'm going to use the simple past because we're talking about a princess, dragons, or something like this. So most likely I am going to use the simple past, okay? So finally, to resume, in spoken French, use the passé composé, the imperfect, and the plus-que-parfait. Okay, nobody's talking in the simple past in French nowadays. That doesn't exist. Maybe like 2 centuries ago, but right now that's not actual. In written story, especially in novels, in tales, you will use the passé simple. You will see it. Okay, so never in the level P2, they're going to ask you to write in the simple past, but you're going to see the tense, okay? And you should always look at the context. Is it the background? Is it the main action or something that happens even earlier in the action? So you need to be very you need to be very careful about the tense you're going to use in the B2 level when you will be writing texts, okay? So, as always, if you like the content, please share and subscribe, and I will say see you in the next video.